Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Steph. Welcome to the second episode of Read It Down. If you're new to my channel or you have no idea what Read It Down is, it is a video series on my channel where I have my friends pick 2 books for me off of my unread TBR shelf, and then I pick a third book, which is a mood read since I am a mood reader, and I have to read all 3 of them in the month that they are chosen for me, or I'm on a book buying ban. Last year I did Read It Down for all 12 months, whereas this year I'm doing it every other month, but the rules still remain the same. I'm not giving myself technically the extra month to read the book. I do a different video series in that month, so I still am sticking to reading it in the month that is given to me. There is a playlist down below if you're interested in any of the other videos in the series, but this month I'm so excited because my favorite silly goose, Noelle from Noelle 7 Pages, is picking my TBR this month. Noelle is awesome. I really love her vibe. I've always been drawn to her channel because she reads a lot of translated works. She loves a retelling, and we just read very similarly yet vastly different, and I feel like I'm always finding something really interesting from her. Also, she's the nonfiction queen, so if you're looking for anything nonfiction, I would check out Noelle's channel, which I will have all of her information linked down below so you can check her out. I think you will absolutely love her vibe, and I'm so excited to see what she picks for me because I do have 3 guesses of what she'll pick, but these are literally a shot in the dark. I have no idea. So the first one I have is Joan is Okay, and I purely am picking this one because it just seems like something Noelle would read. And then my second guess is also just because she loves retellings, or at least I've noticed she reads a lot of retellings, and that's Sister Song. I don't really know what this is a retelling of, and I could be absolutely wrong, but it does say that it's a beautiful reimagining of an old British folklore ballad. Sister Song weaves a captivating spell of myth and magic around the reader. Just seems like a Noelle thing. And my third guess is purely because we loved the first book in the series, and it's Fevered Stars. So we both loved Black Sun. I would imagine she would probably pick a sequel to Black Sun since we both loved it. So those are my 3 guesses. Again, shot in the dark. But let's see what Noelle actually picked for me to read.
Steph, hello. So excited that you asked me to be on Read It Down. I have thought long and hard about which books I'm gonna have you read, because originally you sent me the pictures of all of the options that you own, and I thought before I'd seen the pictures I was gonna pick some books that I loved, that I have read, that I've loved, that you own. I think I've read maybe 2 of the books that you sent me, and I didn't love them necessarily. So then my next idea was, well, I'll just have you read books that I really want to read, that I've been meaning to read, that I haven't yet, and then if you like them, then I will read them. So the first one that I'm picking for you is Calie, because I've heard only amazing things. I know nothing about it except that it's a mythology retelling, which is something that I really love in particular, and I hope that you also love it. I also know that it's a longer book, and I thought maybe I'll take 2 large books off of Steph's shelf for her. So first book, Calie. Then the second book that I'm choosing for you is The Sentence by Louise Erdrich, because I just unhauled this book. 2 weeks ago, I just unhauled this. I had owned it for a long time. I really still want to read it. I just, for some reason, never picked it up, so it's not on my shelf anymore. And if you read it and love it, then that will solidify my regret. Between us, I do regret unhauling it. So if you love it, then I will reacquire it and read it for real this time. Sunday would like to say hello. Hello. Thank you so much for asking me to be on Read It Down. I hope you love them. Okay, that's it. Love you, bye.
See, don't you just love her energy? Okay, these are the books. They are pretty chunky, actually. Oh my god, they're both deckled edges. I'm gonna say something controversial, yet brave. I don't like a deckled edge. Why? Also, it feels Gross. Anyway, I'm actually very excited about both of these because Calie is something I've been hearing a lot of great reviews for. I'm not necessarily a retellings type of person, but this one is really compelling for me. Like, I'm very interested in it, and when I saw that she picked it, I was like, oh, maybe I'm in the mood for that. Maybe I'll read this right away. And then The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. So I actually really love Louise Erdrich. I have a bunch of her books, a lot of her books, and I've read 3, I think, at this point of her works, and I've really loved all of them. So I'm very excited about this one. I'm a little nervous though, because I do know this is like the main character goes to prison. She dies. I don't know if she dies in prison, and then she haunts a bookstore. But apparently in this book, COVID happens. Like, it lines up with 2020 and COVID happens, and it talks about the Black Lives Matter movement and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. So I'm nervous because I don't know if I'm ready for a book like that, but I trust Louise Erdrich. I really like her writing. And I bought this obviously with the intentions of reading it. So now's as good a time as any. I'm actually boldly gonna say I think Calie could be a 5 stars. I think it could be a banger. Good morning. This lighting is something, but it's the day of LA Festival of Books. I'm sad because Erin was supposed to be here, but due to unforeseen circumstances, we are rescheduling our visit. But I'm really excited to go to LA Festival of Books. I went last year, but I didn't get to go to any panels, and this year we are going both days. Jared gets to go with me, which he hasn't been in 4 years, which was the first time I had ever gone. I also wanted to update that I am starting Calie. I will be reading this as I'm getting ready, and then I don't know how much of it I'm going to read this weekend, but I will try to vlog as much as possible at the LA Festival of Books. Anyway, this is the before, after.
What's it like inside your mind, my dear? And do you find it terrifying? You always let me know, you always let me go my way. You always let me know, you never let it show my deed.
And when you're in doubt, and when you're in danger, take a look all around.
Hello, so we are back from the Festival of Books. Immediately when I got home, we fed the cats and then I showered. But I wanted to show you what I got. So I did end up getting an LA Festival of Books t-shirt. So that's the front. And this is the back. I think it's so cute, the little cat. I had to get one. I've never gotten one of their shirts before. I feel like this was Olive. Like, this was designed after Olive. Although I feel like she would be scared of the mouse, to be honest. But maybe the mouse is Fitzy. And then I went to the Tananarive Dew panel that also had Stephen Graham Jones and Leigh Bardugo. I've already seen Leigh Bardugo 2 other times. I saw her at LA Festival of Books in 2019, and then I saw her at Comic-Con in 2019. So I'm glad I wasn't there to get books signed by her, because that was a nightmare. They should have like put her separately and did a whole other thing with her, because most of the line was there to see her and get books signed by her. But luckily, you know, we got to get in and see Tananarive Dew and Stephen Graham Jones. So I ended up buying the Wishing Pool, which I had talked about in another vlog. I'm not the biggest fan of short story collections, but on the panel, Tananarive Dew actually said that one of the stories in here is based in the town that the Reformatory, which is her new novel coming out in October, is set in. So I was like, I need this. I need it. Because I did actually bring my copy of The Good House, and I got both of them signed. I will show you. It says, Stephanie, be careful what you wish. This one says, it was great to meet you. Welcome to horror, because I had told her that The Good House is actually the book that got me into horror, which is true. I weirdly read this, and then I read Not My Heart is a Chainsaw, The Only Good Indians. in the same month, I guess it was October, I read it for Fortnite Frights, and I loved both of them, and it started making me a lover of horror. So for them to be on the same panel was really awesome. So I also got My Heart is a Chainsaw because I was really skeptical about this book. I don't really watch slashers, but that panel just made me realize how much I love Stephen Graham Jones as an author. So I'm gonna trust it, and I'm gonna read My Heart is a Chainsaw, and I hope that I love it. But I love his signature in this. He said, Stephanie, us PH people gotta stick together. And then he stamped these. And opening this and seeing how many books he's written, amazing. He literally, even on that panel, you could just tell that he was a storyteller. Like, he loved writing stories, and that was just really cool to see. It was an amazing panel, actually. I ended up missing the second panel, which had Allison Cochran in it, only because I really wanted to get my book signed by them. I wasn't sure if I cared. You know, I sometimes don't care about getting books signed, and I was a little nervous because Leigh Bardugo was in their signing setup, so I thought it would be a crazy line, which it was. It was so long. They had to cap her at like 200 because they only had an hour to sign. Tomorrow we have 2 other panels, and we'll just be walking around, and there's some author signings at some of the bookstore booths that I'm kind of interested in, so we'll see what we do.
What's it like inside of my mind?
Back from day 2 of the LA Festival of Books, which is also the last day. It's 4 right now, so we left a bit early. I mean, everything kind of closes down at 5 anyway, but we pretty much went to our panels and saw everything that we wanted to see. So I ended up seeing Ashley Herring Blake, which, if you don't know, wrote Delilah Green Doesn't Care and Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. She's also written a bunch of other books that are mainly like YA and middle grade, but this series is kind of like what got me into romance, like fully got me into romance, because this book, I'm in love with Delilah, okay? But this book is a later in life coming out story. So just both of these mean a lot to me, and I got to say that to Ashley Herring Blake. But yeah, she ended up signing them. It was really cool to see her panel. She's very funny. She's very cool. And then I ended up seeing Alexandria Bellfleur, who wrote Written in the Stars, Count Your Lucky Stars. This is her new book, and I ended up getting this signed as well because she just happened to be at the Ripped Bodice, and she signed it. She's very cute. She's very sweet. I'm really looking forward to this one, actually. And then on the panel with Ashley Herring Blake, there were a few other people that I had actually never heard of, but one of them I had heard of, and I was like semi-interested in this book. And I think her name is Elisa Sussman, but it's The Funny You Should Ask. So when she was describing it on the panel, it made me that much more interested in it. So I'm glad that I got this, and I kind of want to read it sooner rather than later. And then I also got The Plus One by Maisie Eddings. Maisie Eddings was also on the panel, and she's actually talking about how all of her books, her intention is always to write about neurodivergent characters, and it just really hit me. And just the way she was talking about it, the reason behind why she writes all of her books, and the intention she has when writing these romance books, I was like, I need to get this book. So this was the only one that they had there of hers. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of the wedding, like going to a wedding as a date thing. I don't know why I don't care about that, but I just really want to read a book by her, so I ended up getting this one. So this is my little haul from today, and overall I ended up getting 5 books because I still have it here, which it's such an array of books because we have 3 romance and 2 horror. So this is my LA Festival haul. I'm really excited. I really didn't want to buy too much. There were so many books there that I could have bought and like I have interest in, and it's so easy to just be in the moment and buy those books, but I've been, like I said, trying to buy with more intention these days. So I'm excited about these. It's always really fun to have like seen a panel with an author and getting to read their book after the fact and like knowing some of the intentions behind what they write. I feel like Funny You Should Ask or The Fiancé Farce might be my mood read for this, because I actually haven't decided on my mood read since I had started Calie, which I haven't made much progress on. I don't have an update about that. But yeah, I'm gonna go take off all my makeup, take a shower, and get into some comfortable clothes. Oh, also, I forgot to say, Catherine moderated the panel with Ashley Herring-Blake, and she did so amazing. So I just want to commend her for that, because it was so well done, so well researched. Like, she was asking such good questions. You knew she knew their work. I just really loved seeing her on that panel doing her thing. She did so good. I'm so proud of her. So I'm glad that I got to see that. So I'm about to get ready for work, and I wanted to update you because this morning I finished The Fiancé Farce by Alexandria Bellefleur. And I really liked this. It was so cute. I actually haven't read anything by Alexandria Bellefleur. I'm actually looking on Goodreads right now because I don't think I've read anything by her. I'm like 100% sure she only has that trilogy, and I haven't read anything in it, although I do own Count Your Lucky Stars. So I ended up finishing this morning, and I really enjoyed it. I would say initially my rating is 4 stars. I definitely enjoyed this, but I do feel it took me a little while to get into it. To be fair to the book, I've just finished marathoning a bunch of Robin Hobb, so I think that's also my issue, because every time I read Robin Hobb I have a hard time getting into other books, but once I got into this one I really enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty funny. I would say it's a less rom-com-y. I don't actually know if it's being marketed as a rom-com, but I feel like a lot of traditionally published romances right now are being considered rom-coms, except for maybe Emily Henry, but even then when I go into them I kind of assume that they're gonna be rom-com-y. But this one definitely isn't, which was perfectly fine with me because I tend to like romances that have a lot of heavier topics, which it's surprising that I don't love Emily Henry more, but I am going to give Happy Place a chance because I did get the ALC for it. But it is surprising to me sometimes that I don't like Emily Henry more just because of how deep she gets, I feel, or I've heard in her books. I've only ever read beach reads. So The Fiancé Farce is following 2 characters. You're following Tansy and you're following Gemma, so you get dual perspectives from them. And Tansy, you meet first. You find out that she's kind of made up this relationship that she's supposedly been in with a book cover model for 6 months who happens to be Gemma. She just made up she was dating her for the last 6 months because she doesn't really want to deal with her stepfamily. Her parents, her biological parents, have passed away, and her care kind of went into the hands of her stepmother, Kathleen. And she feels like because Kathleen was so drowned in her grief, she didn't realize that her daughter, who I'm forgetting her name right now, it was actually really horrible to her growing up. And there's this mysterious thing that happened between them many years ago and this guy named Tucker. There's a whole situation that happened between them. We obviously don't know it yet, but that's kind of led to her making up this relationship. So you end up meeting Tansy at Tucker, one of the guys that she had a situation with a long time ago, his wedding, and in the middle of a conversation where Tansy's stepsister is trying to call her out for her relationship and being like, well, nobody has met this girl. Is she real? Gemma actually walks in because she is related to Tucker. They are cousins. And Gemma just kind of goes along with it from the start. And then Gemma ends up saying, yeah, we're engaged. And Tansy's like, what the fuck? I've never met you before. What are you talking about? So when Gemma and Tansy get the opportunity to talk to each other about why Gemma said that they were engaged and why she went along with it, it turns out that Gemma's grandfather died and he owns a newspaper company. And if she doesn't get married by the time the shareholders meeting happens to determine who this company will go to, she isn't gonna get it. She forfeits her right to get the company. So she is wanting a fake marriage, and it just sort of happened to fall into her lap in that moment. And she proposes to Tansy that, like, if you do this fake marriage, it'll be only for 2 years, and I will literally do whatever you want if you just do this one thing for me. And Tansy's like, no, I'm not gonna do that. She's kind of iffy about it. You then find out that Tansy's family owns one of the larger independent bookstores in Seattle, and that her stepmother wants to sell it. And Tansy is very adamant that she wants to keep this in the family, and that she wants to be the owner of it, and that it should have went to her, but she was too young when her father died for it to actually go to her. And so she feels like she deserves this, but her stepmother's like, if you have $6 million, then it's yours happily. So then she goes to Gemma and says, I will agree to this marriage if you help me buy this bookstore. And Gemma's like, got it, done. It's interesting because I went into this with the impression that this was a fake dating, obviously fake marriage type trope, but I feel like Tansy and Gemma are immediately attracted to one another, and that it really doesn't feel like they slowly fall for each other and that anything is fake. It kind of feels like they jump into their relationship and sort of give it a chance right off the bat. So I don't know if you really like the whole fake slow burn into a relationship type of romance. I don't know that I would call this that, because it definitely wasn't slow burn. They seem to be really attracted to each other. Like a quarter of the way into the book, decide that they want to be friends with benefits because, you know, they're still trying to get to know each other, but I feel like there's already a really big attraction there. It's funny because I know that this was dual POV, but I feel like I liked Tansy way more than I liked Gemma, and not that I disliked Gemma, it's just that I liked being in Tansy's perspective more. I felt like Gemma's perspective was really forgettable for me, but I can't really explain why, because I don't dislike Gemma. Like, I like Gemma with Tansy, but I didn't care about all the other stuff happening in her life. Whereas with Tansy, I was very invested in the whole bookstore stuff and like what she was doing in the bookstore. It made me feel really nostalgic, and I'm like, do I want to be a bookseller? Because currently I'm a librarian, but like, do I want to be a bookseller now? Is that what I want to do? But I definitely have a soft spot for Tansy more than Gemma, I guess. Like I kind of said earlier, I do feel like it took me a little bit of time to get into this story, but by the halfway point, I was definitely invested, and I felt like the conflict that happened between Gemma and Tansy made a lot of sense, and it was resolved by actually communicating, and communicating in what felt like a really healthy way. And just the conflict itself made sense to the story that was being told, and also who the characters were surrounded by and people's motivations in this book. So I do feel like while sometimes people hate third act breakups, and I myself have complained about them before, I do think that this one was really logical and made sense to the story itself, to the characters, and like the way that they resolved it made a lot of sense for these two characters as well. So I don't know, I don't have like that much to say about it. It was really sweet by the end, and I enjoyed reading it. I'll definitely read more by Alexandria Bellefleur because this made me really enjoy her writing. I'm excited to try another book by her, see if I like it more or less. I am 30% into Calie, and I'm really enjoying it, but I don't have like a whole lot to say right now. I'm not invested in a way where I don't want to put the book down, but when I am reading it, I am really interested in what's happening. But I'm gonna finish getting ready, I'm gonna clean the house, and then I hopefully will be at the 50% mark, and I'll give you an update and like an overview of what the book is about. I just made a little afternoon chai pick-me-up because I'm so sleepy today. I just got back from work, and if there's one thing about me, as soon as I get home from work, I'm gonna get in pajamas, okay? That's just the facts. Also, I am 62% into Calie. I do really like this, more so than when I was talking about it earlier. I kind of still get that feeling of like, if I did put this down and I wasn't focusing on it, it wouldn't be at the forefront of my mind to pick it back up. I think that it's really well written. I'm compelled by the plot line for the most part. And I do think that Calie is a really strong, well fleshed out character, but I feel like all of the side characters that are fairly important to her development as a character aren't as well fleshed out. So I think that I'm struggling because as much as I'm rooting for her and I'm very interested in the progression of her storyline, especially with how things are unfolding, I'm not sure that I'm compelled by anything other than her, and that makes it hard to feel fully immersed into this world. But that being said, I do like the discussions in here. I do like her and what she's trying to accomplish. So I think the cool thing about Calie and this story in general is that the overarching theme is feminism and these women living in a very patriarchal society that doesn't really respect women except for child rearing and just overall being a wife. But the thing is that Calie was raised with 7 other brothers, so she's very adept at fighting, at horseback riding. She's just very well versed in things that men are typically well versed in. And so she does prove to her husband that she can help him in war, and she ends up doing that at one point, and he starts to give her a little more respect. And in turn, her and the other wives of her husband end up creating the Society of Women, and in the Society of Women they are actually helping people in the kingdom. So they are essentially giving advice and doing things that men in power would be doing in this world. And so in doing this, she has upset the gods, because the gods rule heavily over the land and over all of the people, and they are the ones that like take and give things. And so she has made them angry. And one of her sons actually thinks that what she is doing is wrong and that she is upsetting the gods, and therefore she needs to stop. And she kind of tries to show to him that like just because she's a woman, it shouldn't dictate her ability to help people. The gods are very intertwined in this story and upkeeping this idea of patriarchy, and the fact that her taking control of her life and her autonomy is upsetting the gods. It's very interesting. And I really like her as a character, as somebody who's really fighting against that patriarchy, and even going so far as to not fight, but like question the gods. So the story heavily is about patriarchy and how this woman and other women in her life, but particularly just her, is navigating it when she is really fighting for autonomy. So there are a lot of interesting elements in here. I wouldn't say there's a concrete plot, because the plot to me is her fighting for women's rights, essentially. That's like the plot. That's the major theme in here. So yeah, hopefully I'll finish that tonight, or at least tomorrow morning. If I had to give you my gut rating right now, it's a 3.5 to 4 stars. But I'm definitely not getting that 5-star feel, unfortunately. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I do really enjoy this and I would recommend it, especially for people who love retellings, especially in the vein of like Madeline Miller. Obviously it's different mythology, but I feel like you'll get those same vibes, you know, the same retelling vibes. Anyway, I'm gonna go finish this. Hi, I finished Calie, and I think my initial rating for it is a 3.5, bordering on 4 stars. I think that the first 10% of this, I struggled a little bit to get into it. I had mentioned that it was one of those situations where I was interested in it, but when I put it down, it was easy for me to kind of forget about it and move on to other books. But when I was reading it, I was pretty invested in it. And I do feel like 60% of this book, I was really, really invested in the plotline, in what Calie's story was going to be, especially with her son and with these gods. But I do think that the last 10%, maybe 15%, kind of lost me a little bit, and not in a horrible way, not in like a bad way where the story just got really bad. There was a lot going on, and there was a lot that needed to be wrapped up that I felt was just very quickly rushed. And there were some deaths and situations that happened that I'm pretty sure I was supposed to feel really deeply about, and I didn't. And I think that goes back to the fact that I think the side characters in here weren't as well fleshed out as I would like them to be, and that Calie is a great narrator. She's a great character. She is extremely well fleshed out, but she is basically one of the only characters that I feel I knew or had any emotional attachment to. And so it makes it hard because some of the situations in here, some of the deaths in here, I do feel something about them because of how Calie feels, but I didn't have any feelings towards it based on the actual situation. And I feel like I was supposed to feel pretty deeply about things or be kind of shocked about certain situations. And it was just kind of like, yeah, that happened and it sucks and it's sad, but I didn't feel that deeply about it. Like I was talking about my last update, the themes of patriarchy and feminism, and that Calie was really trying to build a new future for the women in her life, but also future generations of women. And this is all based on her relationship with the various men in her life, but also her relationship with her kingdom and the patriarchy in which she has to live and conduct herself. And I think it's very interesting that all of the men in her life, they all do something to her that is out of her control, that she can't control because she's a woman. But not only that, she is also seeing the things that are happening to other women and how there is this internalized misogyny in a lot of these women because of how they're raised and the culture in which they exist and navigate. You see this with some of the wives that she became very close to. Her husband has multiple wives. And so you see that they grow and have this beautiful relationship, but certain things dealing with men snap that relationship. You see that with her mother and the way that her mother treated her growing up in comparison to her 7 brothers. But then you see the way that men are constantly hurting women by the way that her dad sent away her mom and made up lies about why he sent her away, the way her brother forced her into an arranged marriage and didn't get her opinion on whether or not she wanted to do this, whether or not this would have made her happy, the way her husband goes back on certain promises that he's made all because of X, Y, and Z and doesn't actually get her opinion about it. He just kind of moves forward thinking that she'll just understand because they're best friends. And her son, the way her son treats her, even though he loves her so desperately, their relationship is very strained for various reasons and because of decisions that she's made and the fact that he doesn't believe in what she's trying to do with this group of women. So it's really interesting how the men navigate Calie. So I absolutely love the themes in here. I absolutely love Calie. I think this is absolutely one of the stronger debuts that I've read more recently, and I would totally read more by this author. Oh my god, I thought someone was behind me. Anyway, I would totally read more by this author. I will definitely be looking out for more of their works in the future. So yeah, I think I would settle on a 4 stars just based off of the fact that 60 to 65% of this book, I was really invested in it. And even the parts that I wasn't extremely invested in, I didn't dislike anything that was happening. I just wasn't as involved in the story and it was easier for me to put down. And just the character work for side characters wasn't as in-depth as I normally like. I really love a side character, but I still feel like because I enjoyed so much of this and I never hated anything, this should definitely be a 4 stars.
My girl thinks I'm dead inside. 23, she's full of life. I'm holding her tight while she softly bites my neck. Baby dreams beyond me. She's tired of dating.
Hello. So I'm reading The Sentence by Louise Erdrich and I am exactly 200 pages in. It's so funny because I think I said in the beginning I thought that this was about a main character who goes to prison, ends up passing away, and then haunts her favorite bookstore. That's not what's going on. I mean, I have the premise right, but there are some things that aren't correct. So it is true that our main character, Budgie, she ends up going to prison because she's in her 30s. She has this best friend and her best friend's supposed love of her life had recently passed away. But because their relationship was so back and forth, he ended up passing away while being with another woman. And so Budgie gets caught up in transporting this body to her best friend so that her best friend can lay him to rest properly because it's the love of her life, supposedly. Well, it turns out that when she does this, they're actually transporting a lot of cocaine between these two women, and Budgie just ends up getting in the middle of it because she loves her friend, but also I think it's implied that she was trying various different drugs at this point in her life, and so maybe she wasn't in the best state of mind to make this type of decision, but she ends up transporting the body successfully and gets arrested. She's supposed to serve a 20-year sentence, but her lawyer was like, I'm gonna fight so hard to get you out early, and he ends up successfully doing that. So I believe she's in her 40s by the time she's out of prison, and she starts working at a bookstore, which is called Birch Bark Books, which is actually Louise Erdrich's real bookstore. And so I knew this was kind of an homage to independent bookstores. This was an homage to her bookstore. I think she's kind of a background character at some point. I'm also very curious if the workers that are described at the bookstore actually are workers that actually work at the bookstore. That would be really fun. But the ghost part of it comes in when a longtime customer ends up passing away on All Souls Day while she was reading a book, and she ends up haunting Birch Bark Books, but very specifically haunting Budgie, and Budgie thinks it's because of what she did in her past, where she essentially desecrated a body, in her opinion. But there possibly is more going on here. This book is really fun because when you say she's being haunted, you might think this is horror, but it's not. There's a lot of humor in here. There's a lot of like not taking itself too seriously in the sense of her transporting this body and like how she just so willingly did it and then went to jail. And you see her talking about her time in jail, but it's like so not serious. It doesn't have a serious tone. It has kind of this underlying humor to it. But at the same time, by the middle of this book, we are experiencing COVID, and they're kind of talking about how the bookstore was deemed as essential, and the main character is like, I love reading more than anyone else, but I don't want to be essential because of the anxiety of being open and working with the public still in this uncertain time. I'm so stupid. Her name is not Budgie. Her name is Tukey. I was like, why does that sound wrong? Yeah, that's another character in here that they talk about a lot. Her name is Tukey, okay? Anyway, I'm having a lot of fun with this. I definitely didn't really know what to expect going into it. Obviously, I had things a little bit wrong. I'm just really enjoying it. Like, I always have been a fan of Louise Erdrich's writing in general, and I feel like this one, while it's covering really serious topics, there's this underlying tone of humor and kind of hopefulness a little bit. But I'm curious to see how the second half of this book will feel now that COVID has been introduced into the plot, and we'll start seeing discussions of George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter movement. So I'm curious how the tone will shift. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I mean, Louise Erdrich, I think in 2020 had 2 books on my best of 2020 list, or 2021, I can't remember. I really, really enjoy her, and I really want to get into her Love Medicine series, even though it's a series that in theory you could read them out of order and on their own and never read the other ones. It's kind of like how romance currently has been doing like trilogies or series where there's characters that connect to the story, but you can read them out of order or not read the whole series. That's kind of how that series is. But I really want to get into it. I've only read 1 in that series, and there's like 12 or 13 or something like that. I wish I knew you wanted me. Hi, so I finished the sentence, and I absolutely am giving this a solid 4 stars. I really enjoyed my time with this. I think I mentioned in my last update that I was loving the tone of it, and I was loving Tukey as a main character, even though I clearly was getting her name wrong. Tukey's narration, her being the main character, is the best part of this book. I just love her as a character. I really enjoyed her narration style. She's easily one of the most endearing narrators slash characters that I've read from this year, and I just really had a good time with this, even though I will say that the last quarter of this book, I don't want to say it lost me because it didn't lose me, but I think that with the addition of COVID, there was a lot going on top of the already established plot line that's happening here, because COVID happens halfway through this book, if not a little more than halfway through the book. I think with the addition of COVID, there was not just a change in tone, which didn't bother me. It was more that there was a lot happening in just a quarter of this book. There was just too much going on in the end, and I didn't feel like we had any resolution. And not that we as the readers deserve any resolution in this story, because by the time it ends, like, COVID's not over. Obviously, COVID still is here. I don't know, it's like, I didn't care that COVID was introduced. I appreciated the discussion that was being had about COVID, but especially COVID in Indigenous communities. But I just think that there were too many plot threads by the end, and not everything came together super well, I guess, which is why I would give this a 4 stars instead of a 5 stars. It's funny to think that this is a COVID book, and I was really intimidated and nervous going into it because I didn't know if I was ready to read a COVID book. Yet I had so much fun with this book. Like, the tone and the humor in here is just so endearing. And obviously when I think of COVID books, I'm not thinking of humorous and endearing, but I really appreciated the approach that Louise Erdrich took with this book. I loved the aspect of a ghost haunting this bookstore and haunting Tookie. So I don't know, I have to give it 4 stars on Tookie alone, and even the side characters. I really enjoyed a lot of these side characters in here. So that being said, Noelle actually got 2 4 stars, which means that she is ranked number 1 in Read It Down right now, with Calie coming in at number 2. But also, I just want to thank Noelle for being a part of Read It Down in general. I always appreciate when my friends agree to do this for me. If you aren't following Noelle, please check my description box. I will have all of her information linked down below so that you can subscribe to her channel. It's great vibes over there, so please go subscribe. Anyway, if you have made it this far and have nothing else to say, please leave a ghost emoji down below, and I will talk to you next time. Bye, friends.